Okay, so today we're going to talk about pharyngeal arches, also known as branchial arches or visceral arches. As a background, you should know that early in the fourth week, the neural crest cells migrate to develop it. The first pharyngeal arch pair, which is called a primordium jaws, elevates lateral to develop the pharynx. Then these arches appear. At the end of the fourth week, four pairs of arches are visible externally. The fifth and the second and the sixth pharyngeal arches are rudimentary and not visible. Pharyngeal arches are separated by fissures or grooves. The first pharyngeal arch, the mandibular arch, develop into two prominences, the maxillary one and the mandibular prominence. The second pharyngeal arch, or called the hyoid arch, the arches support lateral wall of the primordial pharynx of the foregut. The primordial mouth, or the stomodium, appears as a slight depression on the surface ectoderm. It is separated, this is the primordial mouth, it is separated from the primordial pharynx by a bilayered structure called the oropharyngeal membrane. It is bilayered, as I said, because it's composed of ectoderm and endoderm. This membrane ruptures at about 26 days and communicates the pharynx and the foregut with the amniotic cavity. So what are the components of the pharyngeal arch? Three components: the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Each pharyngeal arch contains four things: the cranial nerves, the skeletal structures, muscles, and arteries. Okay. So nerves. In the first branchial arch, we have the trigeminal nerve, specifically V2 and V3. So the maxillary and the mandibular branches. Second arch has the facial nerve. The third arch has the glossopharyngeal nerve. The fourth arch, superior laryngeal nerve, which is a nerve coming from the vagus. Fifth arch has no derivatives. Sixth arch has recurrent laryngeal nerve, which is also a derivative from the vagus nerve. So coming to the second domain, which is the skeletal structures. In the first arch, which is called Meckel cartilage, we have several structures. The malleus is from in its entirety from the first arch, except the manubrium. We'll see from where it comes. Incus, same thing, except the long process. The squamous portion part of the temporal bone. Squamous portion is very important to distinguish. Zygoma, maxilla, mandible, the anterior ligament of the malleus, and the sphenomandibular ligament. These are the first arch skeletal structure derivatives. The second arch, Ricard's cartilage, has the malleus, which is the manubrium. All other parts of the malleus is derived or are derived from the first arch. Incus has the long and lenticular process. Stabis suprastructures, styloid process, which is important, lesser corneo of the hyoid, and the upper part of the body of the hyoid, as well as the stylohyoid ligament. All these are derived from the second arch. The third arch, you have two things: greater corneo of the hyoid, as opposed to the lesser corneo of the hyoid, which is derived from the second arch. The greater corneo is derived from the third arch, and the lower part of the body of the hyoid. The fourth arch has three things: epiglottis, the cuneiform, and the thyroid cartilage. Fifth arch, as we said, no derivatives. Sixth arch has the arytenoids, the corniculate, and the cricoid. Coming to the muscles, the first arch, which is, as we said before, the trigeminal nerve, specifically V2 and V3. You have five types of muscles, let's say. Muscle of mastications, which are the temporalis, masseter, and medial and lateral pterygoids. Secondly, tensor tympani. Thirdly, tensor villi palatini, then mylohyoid, and then the anterior belly of the digastric. Anterior belly of the digastric is an important muscle to remember. The second arch, which is from the which has the facial nerve as its nerve, The muscles are the muscle of the facial expression, stapedius, stylohyoid, and the posterior belly of the gastric. The third arch, which has the glossopharyngeal nerve as its nerve derivative. The muscle is the stylopharyngeus muscle, and I highlight it here because it's very important and commonly asked in MCQs and so on. Fourth arch by the superior laryngeal nerve of the vagus nerve has the cricothyroid. All muscles of the pharynx except the stylopharyngeus, which we said previously. What are the muscles of the pharynx that we should mention? The superior, middle, and inferior constrictors, the salpingopharyngeus muscle, and the palatopharyngeus muscle, as well as all the muscles of the soft palate, except the tensor villi palatini. Okay. The muscles that you should mention are levator villi palatini, musculus uvuli, and palatoglossus, and the palatopharyngeus. Fifth arch has no derivative, and the sixth arch, which is the recurrent laryngeal nerve, all intrinsic muscles of larynx, except the cricothyroid, because the cricothyroid is a derivative of the fourth arch. So what are the muscles that we should mention? Posterior and lateral cricoarytenoid, interarytenoid, thyroarytenoid, vocalis, thyroepiglottis, which opens the laryngeal inlet, and the aryepiglottis, which closes the laryngeal inlet. Arteries, which are the fourth and last part of the pharyngeal arch derivatives. The first arch, maxillary. Second is stapedius, or stapedial artery. Third is the internal carotid artery. Fourth is the right subclavian artery on the right side, and the arch of the aorta on the left side. Fifth has no derivative. Sixth, on the right side, you have the right pulmonary artery, proximally. Distally, it degenerates. On the left side, proximally, you have the left pulmonary artery, and distally, you have the ductus arteriosum.